Your camera is on. Can you see me? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Inshallah, from today, we will start our new series of talks about the life of Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu an. And today is the first talk about the life of Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu an. Inshallah, we'll start from the basics about the life of Uthman bin Affan, like his name, his lineage, parents, the titles that he had, and where he was born, and what were his physical attributes. And then we'll talk about the marriages of Uthman bin Affan, his children, his siblings, and how he came into the fold of Islam. So these are the few things, inshallah. I'll try to cover them in today's talk. And when we talk about Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, he was, from his lineage perspective, he was connected to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Abdul Manaf. So he was from Banu Abdul Manaf. And his lineage was Uthman bin Affan bin Abil As bin Umayyah bin Abdul Shams bin Abdul Manaf. So from Abdul Manaf, the lineage of Uthman was connected to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not only from his father's side, but also from his mother's side. He was very closely related to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the reports talk about that from his mother's side, the mother's grandmother was the sister of Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib, meaning she was Hakim al-Bayda was the aunt of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she had a son named Qurayz with Rabi'a, and from Qurayz there was a daughter named Arwa. And Uthman bin Affan was the son of Affan bin Abil As and Arwa bint Qurayz. When we talk about Arwa, the mother of Uthman bin Affan, she was also from Bani Abdul Manaf, but actually she was, if you look at her lineage was Arwa bint Qurayz bin Rabi'a bin Habib bin Abdul Shams. So she was from also the family of Bani Abdul Manaf as well. Now, about the grandmother of Arwa and the aunt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is another report that talks about that she was not only the shaqiqa of Abdullah. When we say shaqiqa, it has a specific meaning in Arabic, which means that the both father and the mother are shared by the siblings. Because you could have you can have a half brother or half sister as well. But when somebody says shaqiqa, it means that both mother and father were same. So Hakim, not only that she was a shaqiqa of Abdullah, but one of the reports talk about she was the twin sister of Abdullah, the father of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Hakim again was the grandmother of Arwa, who was the mother of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. Just some of the things that is good to know, that's how this whole family structure was. And now, besides that, when we talk about the mother of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, Arwa bint Qurayz, she became a Muslimah, and she died in the Khilafah of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu an. And the report says that Uthman bin Affan radiallahu an himself, he carried her to the grave, while his father Affan bin Abil As, he died during the Jahiliyyah. So he died prior to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was appointed as the Prophet. Now, his mother, on the other hand, she married to Uqba bin Mu'ayt, one of the arch enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we talk about the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the Meccans, from the Quraysh, we mention the names like Abu Jahl, Walid bin Mughira, As bin Wa'il, Akhnas bin Shuraiq, and Uqba bin Mu'ayt. So these are few of the leaders of the Mecca who were against the teachings of Islam, against Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the ones who believed in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and believe in Islam. Now, so we'll talk about a little bit about the siblings of Uthman bin Affan in the later part of the talk, inshallah. But as far as Uthman bin Affan goes, so his name was Uthman bin Affan, and we talked about his lineage. And when it comes to his titles, his kunya during the days of Jahiliyyah was Abu Amr. Now, as we know that in general, kunya is referred to the eldest sons. You go by eldest son in general, not necessarily all the time. You could have kunya, which sometimes some of the Sahaba, you will find that it is not directly linked to that they had a kid named that. But he was named Abu Amr. His kunya was known as Abu Amr during the days of Jahiliyyah. But when he married Ruqayya radiallahu anha, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she gave birth to their son Abdullah, who after that Uthman bin Affan was referred as Abu Abdullah because of the son he had from Ruqayya radiallahu anha, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We'll talk about Abdullah also. Abdullah was, of course, he did not live too long and he passed away. But Uthman bin Affan was also known by a title, famous title, Dhun Norain. When we say Dhun Norain, just translation, the meaning of these words is referred as the carrier of two lights, or the possessor of two lights. And there are reports which talk about why he was referred as Dhun Norain. And one of the reports says that he was referred as Dhun Norain because he was married to the two daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ruqayya and Kulthum radiallahu anhuma. And the report goes on and says that not only that, but from the time of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam until Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nobody married two daughters of a prophet. So Uthman was referred as Dhun Norain, and this is one of the reports which is mentioned by Abdullah bin Umar bin Aban al-Ju'fi. He said, my maternal uncle Hussein al-Ju'fi said that, oh my son, do you know why Uthman was called Dhun Norain? I said, I don't know. And then he mentioned that because no one else was ever married to two daughters of a prophet from the time Allah created Adam until the hour will begin, except Uthman radiallahu anhu. So this is another reason that he was referred as Dhun Norain. Now, when it comes to his birth, Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, he was born 6 years after the year of elephant or Amul Fil. That makes him about approximately 5 years younger than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we have talked about this in other talks when we talk about Amul Fil, or the calendars people used to use for referring to remembering the years. And it's always in the history of Islam, the human mankind, you find that different nations, they selected their calendars linked with important events of their lives. Hence, at that time, among the Meccans, one of the most important events that occurred at that time was when Abraha attacked the Kaaba, and Allah Azza wa Jal descended the birds who threw stones at those the army of Abraha and Abraha himself, and they were destroyed by Allah Azza wa Jal. Hence, because he came with the elephants to attack the Kaaba, hence the year is remembered as Amul Fil. And we will find the same way, same pattern across different nations, and even among the Muslims today, we have a Hijrah calendar, because of Muslims understood well that the most important event, one of the most important event of the history of the Muslims was the Hijrah. And not only that, but it will not be incorrect to say that was the most important, one of the most important event of the history of the mankind, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated from Mecca to Medina to establish the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. That is, we are the fruits of the very same migration that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made from Mecca to Medina. Now, moving on, besides his birth, when it comes to the way his physical appearance was, Az-Zuhri, he mentioned Uthman's looks, as he says that Uthman was a man of average height with handsome hair and face, with a bald spot. And it says he was asla, but at the same time, he also mentioned he had nice hair. So this is referred as that he had a bald spot. And then he goes on about he had a hooked nose, big calves, and long arms, and was covered with hair. I mean, these are the reports that I mentioned about that. But let's see, this is the interesting part. Some of the scholars are mentioning these things, but in general, when it comes to normally when we read about the Sahaba, we ourselves we've been kind of trained in the manner that we don't pay attention normally about the looks, about the physical attributes. Rather, the most important thing for us to remember Sahaba Ridwanullah alayhim is what they did for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why we always remember them from their actions, not by their looks or their wealth or their or kind of a job or the work they used to do. Rather, we remember them by their action, even though all these things, when we talk about these attributes, they are parts of the part of human being. It's not that people don't work, or Sahaba did not work, or Sahaba did not have the people with the different qualities even come to appearances of the humans. I was just reading about one of the Sahabis named Julabayb, for example. Julabayb was famous to be because of he was not good looking. So, but it's not because of that. He is, again, it's mentioned about his looks over there because the incident of his marriage was so important that he was married to one of the beautiful women because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded, and the command of Rasulullah sallallahu was fulfilled right away. So that's the key thing. Not he was mentioned because of how he looked. Rather, it was, again, it's the actions, even though aspect that's mentioned there is his looks. But anyways, so Sahaba in general were not mentioned about it. Even Zuhri, when he is talking about Uthman's even skin color, he says, well, the dominant opinion is he was fair skinned, but there are opinions that talk about he was dark skinned. That shows that these were not the most important things for the Sahaba and the later generations to talk about or to mention them as the most important things. Now, when it comes to his children, and the brothers and sisters who are watching on the internet, inshallah, I will share this chart. I should have shared the other chart as well. Is because, okay, I don't have the permission, so I cannot do that. Okay, so when it comes to his children and marriages, what it says is that Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, he was married, he had 8 wives in all. And all of them were after Islam, after he became Muslim. That's what it mentions. Now, Ruqayya radiallahu anha, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who gave birth to Abdullah bin Uthman. And inshallah, I will go over the number of children as well each wife had from Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh. So if you can give me the okay, so I can at least put on the screen the chart, because it makes it much easier for to be followed. Okay. So you can see it now on the screen, yeah? Okay. All right. So Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, he had he was married to Ruqayya bint Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and from Ruqayya he had a son named Muhammad. And after Ruqayya passed away, he was married to Kulthum bint Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the other daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we will talk about these marriages as they happened, inshallah, some of the important ones when we talk about the further life of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh. As we know about Ruqayya, she was sick when Sahaba and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam were going for the Battle of Badr, and he was not able to attend Battle of Badr because of that. And inshallah, we'll talk about those things later on. But besides that, he was also married to Fakhita bint Ghazwan, and from her, he had another son, Abdullah. But this was referred as Abdullah al-Asghar, meaning Abdullah, the younger one. And then he was also married to Amr binti Jundub. And from her, he had 5 children: Amr, Khalid, Aban, Umar, and Maryam. And from Fatima bint al-Walid, another wife of Uthman, he had three children: Al-Walid, Sa'id, and Sa'ad. While al-Banin bint Uyayna, he had a son named Abdul Malik. And Ramla bint Shayba, he had 3 children from her: Aisha, Aban, and Amr. While from Naila bint al-Farafisa, he had 2 children, Ambasa and Maryam. And a report talks about he also had al-Walad. Al-Walad is somebody who was a female slave. From her, he had a child named al-Banin. Now, when we say al-Walad means in Islam, because that's another whole topic of slavery, which is not the main subject here, but I just want to touch base on that. When we hear the term slavery in context of Islamic history, it is not same slavery as we talk about in the Western histories. It's a very different concept, especially after Islam. In the Jahiliyyah, that was different. When Islam came, it was very different. One of the things was this reality existed during the time when Islam came, and Islam took care of that to the extent that there were rights specifically for the slaves at that time who were slaves. And in a very short period of time, in general, slavery was eradicated among the Muslims. And in Islam, when the child of a slave is not a slave, for example, or if somebody who had a female slave and had a child from him, then that becomes Walad, meaning she is the mother of the child of the person who she had consummated. Now, that woman automatically becomes free after the death of the master, number one thing. And she is the child of the son, and the son is going to inherit the same way as any other child. And there are other rules about even the male slaves and all that. For example, there's a concept of makatab, which is you can free yourself by paying a certain amount that you make agreement with your master. So okay, so that's about the very high level chart that I showed here, also regarding the children and the marriages of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh. Now, besides that, there's a little bit detail about some of the children of Uthman radiallahu anh. Ruqayya, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who Uthman married her, she gave birth to Abdullah, the son of Uthman, after 2 years. 2 years before the Hijrah. Which Hijrah are we talking about? That before they migrated to Medina. Okay, and his mother so when they migrated to Medina, during his first days in Medina, he was pecked by a rooster on the face and near his eye, and there was some infection spread, And at the age of 6 years, the Abdullah passed away. So he did not live too long. This is why we don't hear much about the son of Ruqayyah, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In general, the children of the only daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they lived and their progeny continued to live on, was from Fatima radiallahu anha, the youngest daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was married to Ali radiallahu anhu. Now, after that, as I mentioned, after death of Ruqayyah, married to Kulthum, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the reports even talk about, because Kulthum also passed away in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the reports says that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had another daughter, he would have married that to Uthman as well. Now, besides the daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he married six other women, and Fakhita bint Ghazwan, who was the sister of the governor Utbah ibn Ghazwan, and she gave birth to Abdullah al-Asghar, as we talked about previously. Now, the other children, which are the 5 children, were from Amr bint Jundub al-Azdiyah radiallahu anha. Now, one of the son was Amr, and he narrated a hadith from Uthman bin Affan and from Usama bin Zayd and Ali and al-Hussein, and some of the other tabi'een as well, Sayyid ibn al-Musayyab, Abu Zinad, these two, Sayyid ibn al-Musayyab and Ali bin Hussein and Abu Zinad, they narrated a hadith from Amr, who was the son of Uthman. So Amr himself, he narrated from his father and Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu. Now, besides that, Khalid was another son, and Affan was another famous son of Uthman bin Affan. He was a leading scholar. He was a faqih. And was known by his kunya Abu Sa'id. Okay, and he was the governor of Mecca for 7 years during the Khilafah of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And he narrated a few ahadith, including a famous hadith that talks about that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, he reported from his father, Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if a person, he says these kalimat during the beginning of the day or the beginning of the night, then he will have three times, then he will not be harmed throughout the day and throughout the night. And those kalimat were Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis samai wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. If anybody says these words 3 times before the beginning of the day or beginning of the night, his day or the night, he will not be harmed. And subhanallah, the very same son Affan, when he was paralyzed from one side, he said, by Allah, I forgot the dua, so the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala befell me. And he was regarded as one of the fuqaha of the Medina of his time. He died in the 105th year after the Hijrah. Now, besides him, the other famous children include Sa'id, who was from his wife Fatima bint al-Walid. He became the governor of Khurasan in the 56th year after Hijrah, during the time of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And Abdul Malik, the son of al-Banin, through Uthman, he died when he was a child. As we talked about the son of Ruqayyah, Abdullah as well. Now, so these were the famous sons and the famous sons of Uthman bin Affan through different marriages that Uthman bin Affan had. Now, when it comes to his sibling, and inshallah, I'll share the slide for that as well. Let me just bring up the slide. Okay. When it comes to his siblings, so we talked about his relation, his lineage to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Banu Abd Manaf. Now, when it comes to his children, his siblings, the only sibling which is the shaqiqa of Uthman. So remember, we use the term shaqiqa for Hakim al-Bayda as a shaqiqa of Abdullah, the father of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shaqiqa means a child who shares who's from the same father and the mother. Now, he had one shaqiqa, which was Amina, radiallahu anha. She was the only sister which is mentioned about the sister of Uthman radiallahu an, who was from Affan and Arwa. But besides that, there are half brothers and sisters mentioned, because after Affan, the father of Uthman, passed away, Arwa married to Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt. Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, as we talked about, he was one of the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Islam in general. But through him, Arwa had 6 children. So which means Uthman radiallahu anh had 6 half brothers and sisters. That included Al-Walid bin Uqba, Ammara bin Uqba, Khalid bin Uqba, Kulthum bint Uqba, Hakim bint Uqba, and Hind bint Uqba. So this Hind is different than Hind bint Utba. So this is Uqba we are talking about, not Utba. Sometimes we find that people get confused. That's why I just want to make it clear. This is a different Hind we are talking about. She's the daughter of Uqba and half sister of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. Okay, now when it comes to the brothers and sisters, so Amina bint Affan, as I mentioned, was the only shaqiqa, or the full sister, if you want to call it, of Uthman bin Affan. Now, as the report talks about, she had during the Jahiliyyah, she used to work as a hairdresser during the Jahiliyyah, and then she married to Al-Hakim ibn Kaysan, the freed slave of Hisham ibn Mughira al-Makhzumi. And during an expedition led by Abdullah bin Jahash radiallahu anh, Al-Hakim bin Kaysan was captured, and when he was brought to Medina, he became Muslim. Now he became Muslim, and he stayed with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the daughter of the sister of Uthman, Amina, she did not accept Islam at that time, and she stayed behind in Mecca. So he stayed with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not only that, he was martyred in the battle of Bir Ma'una, which was beginning of the 4th year after the Hijrah. Now, Amina, as I mentioned, she stayed, the full sister of Uthman bin Affan, she stayed in Mecca. But at the time of Fath Mecca, she, along with her other sisters, and Hind bin Utba, I'm mentioning here. This is the other Hind, the one who was involved in killing of Hamza, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in Ghazwat Uhud. Now, along with Hind bin Utba and even other sisters, she became Muslim, and she gave the bay'ah to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about not associating with Allah or steal or commit zina. So she became a Muslimah later on. Now, the other half brother, Al-Walid ibn Uqba, is another famous brother of Uthman bin Affan, by the way. And his father, of course, Uqba bin Mu'ayt, he was killed on the day of the Badr. So he was one of those guys about whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam named the people who were killed later on in the Badr, because these were the ones who harmed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the period of the Mecca, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing the da'wah in Mecca. Now, so his father Uqba became a prisoner in the Badr, and he was killed. And Al-Walid went out with his brother Ammara after Hudaybiyah to bring back their sister. Which sister? Kulthum. So they had another sister, Kulthum. So who became Muslim and migrated. Now, there's a small reminder about, and inshallah when we get to Hudaybiyah, maybe we may talk about that as well. Hudaybiyah, one of the things about the Hudaybiyah was anybody who become Muslim after this treaty and goes to Medina and the guardians want them to be back, they will be, Rasulullah allow them to come back to Mecca. While if in Medina, if somebody is already a Muslim and leaves Islam, and he wants to come back to Mecca, Rasulullah would not stop them. Okay, so he has the right to go back to Mecca. Okay, Rasulullah cannot get them back. Okay, now when this happened, so the whole story happened that because the treaty was talking about the men, treaty was not talking about the women. Hence, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow her to be given back to the Meccans or to her brothers. But Al-Walid, he became Muslim on the day of the Fath Makkah as well. Ammara was another brother, half brother, and he was late in coming Islam, but he also became Muslim. Khalid, another brother was Khalid bin Uqba, and the sister was Kulthum bint Uqba. She became Muslim in Mecca and migrated and gave the bay'ah to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she was the first woman to migrate after Rasulullah came back to Medina after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So this is where the link is, because after the Hudaybiyah, the part of the treaty was if somebody becomes a Muslim and goes to Medina, the guardian of the person had the right to bring him back. But that did not apply to the women. Hence, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam refused to give Kulthum back. And other sisters were Hakim and Hind. Okay. Now, I don't know how much time I have here. Okay, I think we can go for another 5-10 minutes. So when it comes to the way Uthman bin Affan was during the Jahiliyyah, it's good to know about his characteristics and the way he used to behave. During the Jahiliyyah, Uthman bin Affan was considered one of the best people of the Mecca. So from the Jahiliyyah time, even in the Jahiliyyah, he was referred as the best of his people. And he was of very high status, very wealthy, extremely modest at the same time. Haya of Uthman is famous. And he was an eloquent speaker as well. And his people really loved him and respected him. And in general, during the days of Jahiliyyah, many of the people were loved and respected because of their wealth as well. So Uthman, when it comes to Uthman, Allah blessed him with abundant wealth. But Uthman, even though he had all those things in his way in the society of the Mecca, he never prostrated to any idol, even during the days of Jahiliyyah. So this is an interesting fact about Uthman. We talked about that when we talked about Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu as well, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, that they never worshipped any idols, even before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was appointed as prophet. And Uthman was one of those people who did not. And the Meccans did not have issue with that. Whether it was Uthman, whether it was Abu Bakr, whether it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Waraq bin Nawfal, and on, they did not have issue at that time if they were not worshipping their gods. But that's interesting, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called for Islam, all those things, when I call all the issues start coming up. That when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was calling for oneness of Allah Azza wa Jal, and not to make anybody partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they understood that well as well, even though they worship Allah. You can see the literature of the Jahiliyyah, that how they used to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even they named their kids as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's son, father was Abdullah. So they knew about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not they did not know. They knew. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, if you ask them about who created heaven and earth, they will say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's not the issue with them, but they were making partners. And when Rasulullah came and he said not to make any partners, La ilaha illallah, there's nobody worthy of worship except Allah Azza wa Jal. This is where the Islam became a thorn for them, and they did not accept, and not only they did not accept that what Rasulullah was calling for, rather they went against Muhammad sallallahu and the Sahaba, the one who believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believed in Islam. Why is that? This is a question that we should ask ourselves as well, that this kind of a shirk we can find, some, unfortunately, sometime happening around us as well. And we have to question ourselves as well, that when we are worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are we worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right way or not? Because it could be that we are sometime unknowingly have started making partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we believe in Him, we don't believe in Him just that Allah is the creator and after that He has nothing to do with our life affairs. No, the very same creator, the very same Al-Khaliq is the one who is Al-Hakim as well. The very same one is the one who is supposed to be worshipped in every sense. He is the Rabb, he is the Rabb, also Rabbul Alameen. He is the Rabb of Alameen. So He should be worshipped in all senses, not only in the ibadat, rather in even our mu'amalat, how we deal with each other, and even how we deal with ourselves also. So all our relationships have to be dealt according to the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal. And if we are not doing that, we should question ourselves. Are we making somebody else to be the one who will be defining these relationships and how to take care of them? Then we should question, are we doing the shirk now? Because we are not following Allah Azza wa Jal. So we are giving that same authority that belongs to Allah, we are giving it to other humans or even our own desires. And that becomes part of worshipping as well. So this is we can see that in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam how the shirk was done, and we can see in the, if not exactly the same way, but in many ways the similarities can be seen how the shirk is done. Okay, now during the days of Jahiliyyah, even in the days of Jahiliyyah, Uthman bin Affan, he was not attracted by the songs or the entertainment as well. And one of the reports says he used to refrain, even looking away from his own aura as well, looking away from any aura. Sorry. So aura means the private parts of others. Now, there is actually a report from Uthman bin Affan radiallahu an, and that report actually makes it easier about him, because he mentioned about how he used to be in the Jahiliyyah. He said, I had no interest in songs. I never committed any immoral deed. And my right hand never touched my private part since I swore allegiance to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I did not drink alcohol even during Jahiliyyah. During Jahiliyyah. And he says, he did not drink in Jahiliyyah or in Islam. Why? He said, because, and I did not, he mentions that because this is the mind is the most important thing that makes humans better than the other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To take away the thinking is a very unjust thing to do. So Uthman, even just from the logical way of thinking, from rationale of his own, before Jahiliyyah, he stayed away from alcohol, from the khamr. And he said, I did not commit zina during Jahiliyyah or in Islam. So this is what Uthman bin Affan, he mentioned. Uthman, he was well versed in the knowledge of knowledge that was available for the Arabs during the Jahiliyyah, including the nasl, the lineage. So he was like Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. Uthman was another person who knew about the lineages of the people as well. And he was well versed in the proverbs and the history of important events that the Arabs were aware of that time. Now, Uthman bin Affan, because he was involved with trade, he also traveled to Sham and Habasha. Habasha, we know he migrated because of migration, that the persecution was happening. Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh and Ruqayyah, they both migrated to Habasha. And as one of the hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions about them, the wordings, the meaning of the hadith is like this: after that, Ruqayyah and Uthman were the first couple who migrated the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after Ibrahim and Lut alayhi salam. Now, so since he traveled to those places, he was aware of he had knowledge about the non-Arabs as well. Not only the Arabs, but he also was aware of non-Arabs. And he learned things about their lives and their traditions and customs as well. So that maybe nowadays these things have become much easier, much more accessible for many of us to learn about other cultures and the knowledge about other places. Because of, even right now, I am talking from here, but the people from the other part of the world can listen to me at the same time. So that gives us an edge in a sense of we have access to so much knowledge. Before before all this, the access, people had to travel and meet the people to get that information, read the different kinds of books, attend the lectures of the scholars, and so on and so forth. Now we have, alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jal has put made us in a manner that now the knowledge is literally at our fingertips. Literally at our fingertips, not only metaphoric way, but rather in a literal manner. You can touch and you can get the information about many sorts of knowledges which are out there. Okay, now he took care of the business that he inherited from his father, Affan bin Abi Bilas, and his wealth grew tremendously. And he was regarded as one of the wealthiest men of the Banu Umayyah, and he held high esteem among the Quraysh as well. Okay, not only he was the wealthiest, but he had a very high esteem among Banu Umayyah and the Quraysh. Quraysh is a higher tribe in Banu Umayyah, of course. Now when it comes to there's some of the evidence which points to the people's love to Uthman radiallahu anh. There's one of the reports that talks about that the Arab woman would sing to her child a song which speaks of the people's respect and love for him. And so, أحبك ورحمن حب قريش لعثمان. Subhanallah. It says that by most merciful, I love you as much as Quraysh loved Uthman. That shows how much love Quraysh had. Unfortunately, nowadays, if you ask some of the Desi young men, they will remember that the fear of Gabbar Singh is the thing that you remind them of. They would scare the children to be scared of. But anyways, the ones who know this, what I'm talking about, they know the joke. But the one who don't know, that's okay. This is not important at all. When we're talking about Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, think of this way, that how much really the people love Uthman radiallahu anh. That the woman would swear by Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman is Allah Azza wa Jal. That she loves the child. Like Quraysh love Uthman. Can you imagine a mother is saying that she loves him as Quraysh loves Uthman? Love of the mother, there's no comparison of the love of the mother to any other love to a child. Even you have to question the father even for that. Anyways, when we talk about the coming to Islam, Uthman bin Affan, as we talked about, he was about 5 to 6 years younger than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the report talks about that he was about 34 or some years old when Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh is the one who called him to Islam. Abu Bakr was very close with Uthman bin Affan, and we know that Abu Bakr came to Islam in a very early stages, and right after he became Muslim, he started calling the very close friends of his as well. And that included Uthman bin Affan, and other names go on, like Uthman bin Affan became Muslim, Abdurrahman bin Auf. Of course, he freed Bilal, and one of the reports talk about Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah also, and Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, and Sa'id bin Zayd radiallahu anhum, all of them ajma'in. So these are the people who came to Islam through Abu Bakr. But anyways, the important thing here to talk about is Uthman bin Affan is the one who was called to Islam by Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, and it means that he was among the very earliest Muslims who entered into the fold of Islam. As Ibn Ishaq says that the first person to become Muslim after Abu Bakr, Ali, Zayd, and Zayd bin al-Haritha, of course, Khadija, he did not mention it, but he's talking about the men. So was Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh. So right after the very early Muslim, Abu Bakr, Ali, Zayd, radiallahu anhum, ajma'in, Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, he entered into the fold of Islam. Meaning he was the fourth man to embrace Islam, according to Ibn Ishaq's reports. Now, so now his coming into Islam at this early age, early time was the result of not just because he was a friend of Abu Bakr, rather he was returning from Syria, Sham, one of the reports talk about, and he told Rasulullah ﷺ that when he entered upon him along with Talha bin Ubaidullah, when he came, he was telling Rasulullah ﷺ what happened. And when he was presented to Islam, both of them are presented to Islam, and the Quran was recited to them, and the duties of Islam were presented, they believed in him. And Uthman said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have come recently from Syria, and when we were between Ma'an and Zarqa, I was about to sleep when I heard a voice calling, 'O sleeper, get up, for Ahmad has emerged in Makkah.' Then we came here and heard about you." So this is one of the reports talk about that. He heard this voice, and when he came there, that was enough for Uthman bin Affan that he heard that, and now when he entered into Makkah, that he heard about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was calling about Islam. Now, interesting part here is this, that we always talk about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a private stage when he was calling people towards Islam privately. Let's be careful about that when we talk about private stage. It's not like he was underground in a cave or sitting in some basement and just calling for Islam from there, and nobody knew that Rasulullah was appointed as a prophet. No, he was calling very close people and the friends of his and the family members towards Islam, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, commanded him to call the people who are from your ashira and from your aqrabin, meaning the one who are your relatives and the close ones. And even though he was calling them like these very closely knit people, but people were aware of the da'wah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The thing that made the da'wah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as open call, it means that he was calling openly all sorts of people. At the same time, he was looking for a change in the society now. So that's what means by the open call. Fasda' bima tu'mar wa 'ala al-mushrikeen, that proclaim now openly. Now he is not only talking about people's individuals who come into the fold of Islam, rather he is calling for the society to be changed. So now, but anyways, the reason I'm mentioning this Uthman bin Affan, when he entered Makkah, he found out that Rasulullah is calling for he is claiming to be a prophet. So it was known among the Makkans that Rasulullah was calling for a new religion or new deen at that time. So that's that should be remembered. It's not just a foolish reason or something Uthman just heard from Abu Bakr. So just because a friend says something he's following, rather he had reasons behind it, and he was a thinker of his own. As we talk about, that takes a man that the whole Mecca at that time was involved in general, most of the people were involved in idol worshipping, but there were a handful of people who were not worshipping idols, and Uthman was among them. That means that there was something that prevented him to worship the idols. And when the call came, that touched his heart and made sense to him, and he accepted the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. So, and also he saw what the people were doing. People were doing idol worshipping. They were eating dead meat, mistreating their neighbors, regardless as permissible, forbidden things such as the shedding of the blood and etc. And what Muhammad was calling was different than what the practices of the society was at that time. So hence we see that Uthman replied or responded to the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the beginning of the da'wah. When it comes to Uthman, he was a very content person, forgiving, kind, charitable, compassionate, and generous, and helping the weak and oppressed until Islam became strong. So he was among those, and we will talk about that in the later talks, inshallah, how Uthman bin Affan played a very big role in the spread of Islam, in the taking care of the Muslims when they were in the weak stages of the time, financially as well. Inshallah, we'll talk about for next week. We'll talk about from the life his marriage to Ruqayya and what happened during that marriage, inshallah. So we'll stop our talk today here, and if there is any questions or comments about the topic we discussed today, I will try to answer them, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.